We also just have like a literacy and reading fluency crisis in the United States. 40% of Americans read at a 6th grade level or below.
Do you get aroused by stimulating intellectual conversation? Are you turned on by the idea of engaging with thought leaders from across the United States? Do you go gaga over exploring important ideas from influential books, research, and essays? Then welcome to Curiosity Porn, the place you can satisfy all those intellectual urges guilt-free. Your hosts are Dr. Guy Crane, Professor of Philosophy at Rose State College, and Professor James Davenport, Professor of Political Science at Rose State College. However, the views expressed here are solely the views of the hosts and their guests and do not reflect the views of Rose State College, its administration, faculty, or students. And now, here are James and Guy.
Sir.
Dr. Crane, how are you today?
Warm.
Yes, I will say I got spoiled by all the rain in May and June.
We have had it very sweet this summer. I have acknowledged that to the hilt because I am in general allergic to the Oklahoma summer, but we've done very well. I said, sir, I was very tempted to say the future Dr. Davenport, because I know how you've been spending your time.
Getting closer, inching closer to having this dissertation put to bed. I've been doing more regression analysis than I ever really wanted to do, but it just went okay. It's went all right, and we'll be done. I committed. They have this progress check that you have to do every so often. And the last one that I did had, for the first time, asked me a question that was not on the others. And it's like, will you be prepared to submit your dissertation by September 30th? And I was like, here goes nothing. Yes. So I'm kind of committed to it now.
We won't out anybody specifically, but I kind of want to know, are your close loved ones finally willing to admit that you are in fact a scientist?
No.
Because you're doing regression analyses.
Yeah. No, they're not there yet. I'm working on them. And we've been working together because of some challenges using different statistical programs for different jobs.
I don't know how you get more sciencey than I'm working on regression analyses.
Yeah, you would think, but no, they're not. They're not there.
Not giving you the cred.
Not at all. Right. If I was doing the math that produced, see, that's the neat thing with these statistical programs is they do all the hard work of producing the math to get the results. And then you just have to know how to properly interpret the results. If I was doing the math to get the results, I might get some recognition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm holding out hope for you.
I appreciate that.
Maybe you can still insist that your loved ones call you doctor by the end of the year. Do you think that'll go well?
Maybe. I think they're excited to do that, actually. So, yeah, I think I've got some folks that are like, they'll be really happy to be able to say Dr. Davenport.
The only person I insist call me doctor is my wife, and it never works very well. Yeah.
I don't insist, but I have told them that, for 6 months or so, they'll need to call me Dr. Davenport.
I feel you. I feel you.
Hey, we've got a great guest today.
We do.
Let's talk about this for a second.
This is a topic we've actually been interested in for a long time, but did not know how to put it together. And I think we have solved that today. I
think so. And you have actually taken a class.
That is correct.
With him. And I took a training session, a 2 or 3 week training session, and just loved it. And was kind of regretting the fact that I had a dissertation that I was working on and I didn't get to immerse myself as much into some of this as actually my daughter, who also took it, is much more immersed in this now than I am. So why don't you introduce who we got? Yeah.
Michael Hanegan is an adjunct professor of artificial intelligence and the future of learning and work at Rose State College and the University of Central Oklahoma. He is also the founder of the Center for the Future of Learning and Work, navigating the relationship of generative AI, learning, work, and our shared life. Michael Hanegan, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
And just so our listeners know, this is actually Michael Hanegan. This is not an AI generated.
That is correct.
Voice.
That's true. He's much funnier.
Well, let's start with this. We got some rapid fire questions for you. Just to kind of introduce yourself a little bit more. How'd you get into academia?
I'm a nerd, so okay. I love to learn. I'm also addicted, I think, to student loans is maybe part of what it might be. I was raised in a way that just said that really taught me to chase the truth wherever it took me. And the problem is it just kept opening more questions. Yeah. And I was like, what better way to answer those questions than to pay a lot of money, go into debt, and read a lot of books? Yeah. And so that's what I've done with my life. And so I'm glad for the time I've spent in academia. It's not the only place I live, but I'm glad to be back in and around it, not just in industry anymore. And it's a fun time to be in the classroom, I think. Yeah.
What's one interesting thing you are currently reading, listening to, or watching? Your pick.
I'm reading a book called Bacteria to AI by Catherine Hales. It's about human, non-human, and synthetic cognition. So it's about how and that human beings are never they never operate entirely by themselves. Like we are creatures filled, like our bodies are filled with creatures, right? Like we don't exist on our own. And we don't do cognition on our own either. And so it's to help think about how we fit in the larger world that is alive and thinking, and then the way that we relate to AI.
Nice. Okay. This next question we've adjusted especially for you. We tend to, whatever the person's field is, ask that person who is the greatest insert field here of all time. You are teaching in AI. You've got a toe dipped in industry. You've also got a toe dipped in theology, if my memory serves me correctly. You've got a lot of plates spinning that sort of make up your various fields of expertise. So I wanted to allow you to choose the field. Who is the greatest blank of all time, and answer it how you'd like.
I'm going to say my current favorite philosopher of all time is Monty Python.
Okay.
I do hope someday in my academic career to teach a philosophy of Monty Python course.
That would I would probably take that.
I have a weird story about this. So the first time I saw Monty Python and the Holy Grail was 2 days after 9/11.
Wow, okay.
And so as a freshman in college, right, the whole world has just been upended, at least my world anyway. And, in the following days immediately after 9/11, we heard a lot of, prayers about war and vengeance and justice. And then I was introduced to the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch, Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail. And it broke my view of the world. Because it was, there's the line, blow them into tiny bits in thy mercy. Mm-hmm. And it for a 19-year-old, that was a great way to ruin an entire worldview in a satirical movie. So that I think is a great place to start.
I had that same experience with Team America, which I believe you still have not seen, have you?
I don't think I have.
That is the puppet movie that was kind of paradizes. I mean, everyone gets made fun of in this movie.
I'm going to have to. Can I find that on Netflix?
I almost guarantee that you can.
All right.
I would definitely not watch it with the children around.
Well, my children are all adults, so they can handle it.
All right.
And if they can't, they can go in the other room.
Okay.
That's it. Yeah. Okay. Hey, what's one thing about the work that you do that you wish people understood better?
Yeah, my work is not about AI. My work is about learning and work and how we build a world that we want. AI accelerates and complicates those questions, but the questions that I'm trying to ask are much older and probably much harder than just questions about artificial intelligence.
I love that. Okay, what's one belief you hold that puts you at odds either with your peers, colleagues, or family?
I'm at great odds with my kids right now because I believe that 1980s cartoons are vastly superior.
Yes, you are 100% correct.
Preaching to the choir here.
Yeah. We will not get any argument from from me, or I don't think from Guy either.
No.
About that. Yeah.
No, I mean, my son grew up in the aughts and early teens, and I had to watch the stuff he was watching, and some of it was just really tough to sit through. He would watch Caillou on PBS, and that little kid is a turd. That was very hard to tolerate watching him watch Caillou, because I was just like, that kid needs to go away. And he's the main character in this show. Yeah.
Hey, we might actually get some feedback off of that now. A bunch of Caillou fans are going to be calling, emailing, saying, hey. We'll
see. Yeah. What is your favorite 80s cartoon?
What would be my favorite 80s cartoon? You know, I don't know if it counts as an 80s cartoon, but I loved watching Scooby-Doo.
I think
I'm
that
not sure.
one overlaps 70s to 80s.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I also watched the Justice League, was a big fan of the Justice League.
I kind of remember that.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are probably the two I remember the most and was big into. Yeah.
I don't remember which was my favorite, but I was definitely watching like He-Man and Thundercats and stuff like that.
I watched a little bit of He-Man. Not a lot, but a little bit.
There were also Saturday morning. Do you remember this? There was a Saturday morning cartoon of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes, I do remember that.
And looking back on it, I am mind blown that was acceptable because of all of the negative hype about Dungeons and Dragons at the time.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, there was another one out about that time. What was now, as you were talking about Dungeons and Dragons, it hit me and now it just flittered away. That's the problem of having an aging brain.
Yeah, anyway, it's all right. It's all right. Let's get to the meat of things. We want to talk to you about all things AI if we can. I mean, this is going to hit all areas of life, really. People are probably hearing about it more now than they did, say, 10 years ago, but it's not at all new. And it's not even new that it's a part of most people's daily life. So for folks who just haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this, can you tell us, just first of all, what is AI and what are the ways that it probably pervades most of our waking hours?
I mean, AI is a lot of things, right? I think it's a much larger question. We've been thinking about or theorizing about these kinds of technologies for decades. What I think has happened now is we now have hardware to bring to life the things that we've always dreamed of. But traditional AI is really just tied to kind of what we would largely just call like algorithms, right? So like these are part of our everyday life right now. The Netflix recommendation engine, when you finish a movie and it says, was this great? Do you want to watch this one? The way your car insurance premium gets calculated, the fraud protection on your debit card. There are a lot of our lives are shaped by this kind of technology. What's new is this generative AI, right? This is a totally different kind of technology. And really what this is, other forms of AI are working through huge data sets, but it's all kind of stable, right? It's looking at data and it's making decisions. Generative AI is a predictive technology. So it's looked at a massive amount of data and analyzed all these patterns across language and all kinds of other material. And then when you use these tools, they try to provide kind of the most likely answer. They're predictive in this way. So it's not like it's going and getting an answer off the shelf and bringing it back to you, which is kind of our traditional experience of software, right? There's a stable answer somewhere and we use tools to go get that for us, like the internet. Like if there's a web page out there and it goes and gets it and brings it back to you. Generative AI is actually building stuff from scratch, or at least it's new, it's novel in that way. I think the thing that's so disruptive about generative AI is it kind of breaks all the rules of how we experience technology. We're used to technology being incremental and slow. So like I remember getting my first cell phone, right? It feels long. It's probably longer ago than I want to admit, right? But in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that long ago, right? But the way in which those have moved, I've never kind of looked down at my cell phone and been like, how did we get here? Like it kind of made sense. It was this kind of gradual, incremental. Or we think about this with like software. Like I always joke about people my age, like, do you remember the like Windows 95 2000 XP years where it was like this roller coaster of, is this going to be great? Is this going to be terrible? Right. But we always we knew it was coming, and we knew we would kind of ride it out and it would be fine. This technology breaks all of those rules. So it breaks the rules of adoption. So like previous technologies, even really transformative ones, take a long time to kind of reach like mass adoption. Like refrigeration took 50 years to get 100 million people in the United States. ChatGPT took 60 days. Wow. Or electrification took like a decade to be in like major cities, right? We've only really been using these tools publicly for the last 30 months.
Yeah, that's probably
right.
Yeah.
And like our cell phones, for example, we use 5G, right? This 5th generation technology. This has taken us decades to get to our 5th generation. ChatGPT, which came out in November of 2022, was kind of a 1st generation model. By September, we'll have the first of our 4th generation models. So it'd be like saying, what we might traditionally do in other technologies in decades, we're doing in like iterations. That are getting shorter, right? So it's not just that it's already fast, but it's fast and faster at the same time. The other piece is that you have these capability jumps. Like, I don't even know what number iPhone I have anymore, but I don't remember like a wild jump between one and the next number, right? Maybe you held out for the upgrade a little bit and it was a little bit more of a jump, right? You held out for three runs and then you made a pivot. But what we have now are these technologies where their capability jump is not incremental, but exponential. And that's really hard for us to kind of metabolize in our minds. Humans are really good at making sense of incremental change. This is why humans have kind of flourished as a species, because we can kind of look back 5 years and extrapolate 5 years ahead. But if you ask someone to think back 100, what was life 100 years ago? It'd be hard for us to kind of explain. In the same way, it'd be hard to say, what's life going to be 100 years from now? But the problem is with the pace of change that we're seeing with these technologies, that thought experiment of 100 years might only be 10 away in reality. So there's just these kind of, the way that we've always kind of lived and moved with the evolution of technology, all of these rules are being broken in real time. And there's no kind of precedent for us to look to and say, oh, this is how we ride that out.
It seems to me that the pace of change is what is so destabilizing for so many people, right? It's like you said, we're very used to and comfortable with incremental change, even if over a period of years or decades, where it started and where it is, if that's dramatic change, if it's incremental in its approach, we're very comfortable with that. This kind of rocket ship change in the span of a very short time frame makes a lot of people uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think it might be different if this was the only change we were experiencing, right? So think about it like when you go to the ocean, right? And when you stand on the beach and like the waves are kind of like at your feet, you can watch a wave coming and it's like not intimidating at all. Like you can pretty well eyeball like, I'm going to get wet, I'm not going to get wet, right? What happens though is when a second wave intersects that wave, you have no idea what's about to happen. Well, the problem is we have like 5 or 6 of those all moving at the same time, right? And so it's that crossing of those waves of disruption. You've got AI, you've got major kind of geopolitical changes, you've got kind of like economic turmoil, you've got kind of this like social friction that's taking place. And then just like the unpredictability of the world, like, we're not too far out of a pandemic, right? There's just a lot of, it's each of these would be complex. All of them together is both complex and unpredictable. And I think that's where a lot of the anxiety comes from.
Well, tell us how you got into working and thinking about AI, working with it. What was your journey to get to that?
Yeah, I got lucky. So I, as a perpetual student, got bored and started doing a PhD in social science, and then got bored being told what to do and what to read. And so I started a company focused on future of work and future of expertise. Because one of the trajectories we were seeing even before the pandemic was that higher education is designed to instill expertise, but the world of work cares about competency, which is a much lower level of capability than expertise. It'd be like bringing Michael Jordan to the YMCA every day. Like it's too much in most applications in the world of work. And so I was interested in what kind of skilling, reskilling, upskilling we would need in a world where expertise was still valuable, but it wasn't needed in the same quantity as just competency. And so I thought I had a pretty good agenda outlined, and I thought I had the next, 10, 15 years to work all this out. And then when ChatGPT drops, I realized I've got about 6 months to put these questions to bed. And now we have to talk about the future of learning and work. And so I've just been fortunate enough to, because I was in the right place at the right time, I've been kind of able to stay on the front.
Well, that leads us into learning more about your center, right? So you found a center for the future of learning and work. Tell us about that. How did that get started? What is your primary mission? What are you hoping to accomplish with it?
Yeah. So when you hear me engage my work, you'll hear me always talk about inseparably learning and work. And part of this is that since the Industrial Revolution, learning and work have been separate. So you go to school for however long you're going to go. My grandfather went to the 6th grade. My father got an undergraduate degree. I keep stacking up letters like it's a game, right? Like we all go to our different levels of education. And then you go to work. And you may go back to school, but it's really only for the purpose of going back to work. And the result of this kind of split over a long time, right? Over a century, more than a century, is that the world of learning has become increasingly disconnected from the world of work, right? So you sit in class and you say, how am I ever going to use this? Why does this matter, right? This didn't help me. And in the world of work, you've lost almost all of your capacity for learning. So that infrastructure, that skill has atrophied in the world of work. So these two realities, that learning is disconnected from work and work can't really do any learning, create a real problem when you're on the brink of the largest upskilling and reskilling in human history. So the center is designed to find and curate and highlight work that is about the renegotiation of learning and work. So there's lots of people working in learning. There's lots of people working in work. There are very few people who are trying to actually connect those conversations. And I think that's going to be the fastest way for us to try and ride the wave of what's coming.
I think, and I've had conversations with folks about this before, I think that separation, while you are correct, that's just how we've approached it, it's not how things actually work, right? I go to work and there's a lot of stuff I'm going to learn there, but we don't categorize that as learning, right? On the job training, or I figure out that doing this way isn't effective as doing it that way. And I test it out and I figure out, tweak it. And all of a sudden I've produced a new process or a new product. So there actually is a lot of learning that occurs, but it doesn't get categorized at that. And I think oftentimes that type of learning is depreciated or less appreciated than the learning that goes on in a traditional classroom. Is that?
I think that's true. I think that's true in white collar work. But the average American gets about 50 hours of professional development a year. Mm-hmm. And most of that is complete this compliance webinar, right, click through this survey, and a poster in the break room that says, do better, try harder, don't mess up. Right. That it's not meaningful learning. Mm-hmm. It's certainly not learning that is trying to reimagine the way in which you do work. Yeah, you might tinker, you might iterate, but it's not substantive. This is also part of a larger trend where just Americans just don't read, Like we have this deep problem where both attention and interest have changed. Part of it is what we read has changed, right? Our culture has moved more towards like short form and informational text versus like sitting down and reading a whole book. But the other piece is that, and I think this is one of the kind of the nagging questions in the back of my mind at Learning and Work, is that we also just have like a literacy and reading fluency crisis in the United States. Like 40% of Americans read at a 6th grade level or below, which means that the back of the Advil bottle is complicated. There's only so much you can do with that level of proficiency. So even if you had on-the-job training, even if you had opportunities for learning, we as a society have not done a good job of giving everyone the tools they need to engage in self-directed learning.
Well, a theme in your work is that you tend to be optimistic about the effects of AI in various areas of our life, which might put you against the grain for some folks who have, Luddite sort of intuitions about these things. Tell us, why should we think about this as generally a good thing?
I think a couple of reasons. One, this is the first technology that will enable us to unlock at scale the wisdom and learning of the human family. So traditionally, education has been rare, slow, and expensive. Now, with these technologies as they improve, learning becomes more accessible, it becomes faster, and it becomes almost free. Will we have to do some heavy lifting to make that useful? Yes, we will. But I think one of the experiences I think about this in my family, when my wife was in graduate school, she went and took a course, a philosophy and ethics course, at a prison, at a women's prison. And she's in a graduate school in a very prestigious program. Her professor is very prestigious, and these women were running laps around everyone. The gap was not in intelligence and in curiosity; it was in access and opportunity. And I think that's true in a lot of spaces. So these technologies really have the power to unlock learning and insight for people who are curious and who are driven, even if they haven't traditionally been able to participate in kind of the formative educational spaces that America has made prohibitively difficult for no good reason, other than it's good for some people that make a lot of money in that system.
Let me we're going to get to this a little bit later in there, but it just prompted me. So I know some people who would push back on this notion that it's going to be good for accelerating learning and whatnot. And most of that comes in the form of, well, if we have a reading crisis now, and what I notice is not just a literary, but a reading comprehension problem as well, AI is just going to make that worse because they're just plugging in their assignments and having them produce answers, and they're not even looking at it, and it's just going to make it worse. So why do you not think it will make it worse? Or do you think there might be a period where it gets worse and then it gets better?
I don't think it's an either or. I think everyone is invited to choose their own adventure. This is what I tell my students. Hey, I'm going to show you how to use these technologies in my courses. This is my undergraduate and my graduate students, right? So that 19-year-old kid, that faculty member who's popping in, the MBA student, who's, maybe pivoting to another career or looking for a promotion, like they're all over the map. I'll say, look, I'm going to show you how to use these tools. You can use them to mail it in. Absolutely. And it will look good. If you know how to use these, I could produce chapter 1 of a dissertation in any field and pass, as long as you don't ask me about it. But the written artifact with appropriate citations and good insight, yes, I can produce that for you in a matter of days at scale. And That's not learning, right? Part of this is that we have to rethink the way we think about pedagogy and design in the first place. But it's not going to be, is it good for everybody? Is it bad for everybody? It's going to be, can we be clear about the opportunity that sits in front of our students? And can we create cultures of learning instead of cultures of suspicion and surveillance that make people want to actually engage in the opportunity that's sitting before them? And so part of the way I talk about this is to say, I try to practice what I call a pedagogy of transparency, which is to say, I will not ask my learners to do anything that I will not explain why they should and why it is good for them. And in the same breath, I will also explain to them the consequences of doing it in a different way. So I'll say, hey, I'm trying to teach you this skill. You don't have to learn this skill in this class. But I don't want the next time you think about me outside of this class to be 2 years from now at work when you get asked to do this thing I'm trying to teach you to do, and you feel like an idiot. I'd rather you never think of me again. Yeah. And that moment 2 years from now be great. Mm-hmm. So even if you're not excited about it, even if you don't think it's particularly useful, I hope that you will invest in the future version of yourself and take this moment. And what control do I have after that pep talk? None. Right. And that's okay.
Well, from your perspective, what are some of the most exciting things that are happening in AI that people aren't really talking about yet?
Yeah, we're definitely not talking enough about what we're doing in science and medicine. Okay. So like the 2024 Nobel Prize in Chemistry went to 2 people from Google DeepMind for their AlphaFold project, which is protein modeling, which is important for drug discovery. So we've been working on protein modeling with computers since the 70s. You used to be able to leave your dial-up internet computer on the phone overnight and donate computation to try and solve this problem. Between the 70s and the early 2020s, we had completed modeling 1% of known proteins. Each protein requiring 4 to 5 years of PhD level work. So typically a student would spend their entire PhD modeling a single protein. AlphaFold 2, which there's now AlphaFold 3. AlphaFold 2 has modeled them all in a year. That is 1 billion with a B, 1 billion years of PhD level science that is available for free to the entire world. And between 1.3 and 1.7 million scientists use it every day to work on drug discovery, life-saving medicine, and innovation. Or there's a piece in the New York Times that I really love from a few months ago. It opens with this story of a man who has a blood disorder, and the only way to treat this is through a bone marrow transplant. But he's too sick to have the transplant. And the hospital just says, we're so sorry. Like we can set up hospice. And his girlfriend reaches out to a doctor who's using generative AI, who she met at a rare disease summit. And he says, call me in the morning. So he and his team at a research space were using AI to look at all off-label uses of medicine at a scale that no human could ever do. And so he called the next morning and said, this chemo, these steroids, and this other thing, no one would ever put this together, but trust me. And so they did. And 4 months later, he was healthy enough for his bone marrow transplant. That's something that humans cannot do. Yeah. You cannot hold that amount of information in a usable way within your brain.
You can't even really hold it together in a usable
database,
reference library or something, right? I mean, it would be impossible.
Even if I have it organized, my ability to move through it is constrained by just the sheer speed and fatigue of my physical body, right? I think we're going to see huge developments in science and engineering and in medicine. Those are the places where it's going to be most obvious, but there are lots of other places that I think are really cool.
I kind of want to dwell here a little bit if we can. I mean, I've been only a tiny bit exposed to kind of the fun and exciting things that you can do with AI programs. I just learned, I think 2.5, 3 weeks ago, that you can get ChatGPT to turn one of your photos into a coloring book page for children. It was I was at a wedding brunch, and the couple had used their engagement photos to make coloring pages for the children who were at the brunch. To keep
that's
them occupied.
awesome.
It was a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
But I mean, okay, yeah, for the sake of anybody of our listeners who don't know, I actually enrolled in the class that you teach at our institution, and you showed us Notebook LM. That was one of the more fun ones that I enjoyed playing with. I mean, we were just uploading papers, and then within a few minutes, it could generate a podcast with 2 completely non-existent actual hosts who are then bantering and even kind of joking with each other about the content of the stuff you upload. When I was doing some work for your class, one of the coolest things I found out was the merging of AI into brain-computer interfaces, especially for people who have various forms of disability. There was one that was enabling people who are physically incapable of talking. They were able to literally have a conversation through this AI program because it was hooked up to their neurology somehow. I don't understand that part of it, and then it had a camera on them, and it was using their feigned muscle movements in their face to predict what they were trying to say. And it was uncannily accurate at getting at what they were trying to say. And so now these people can literally converse, whereas like the old machines were just like tracking their eye attention, looking at an alphabet as they spelled everything else that they wanted to say out letter by letter.
Yeah, like typing with one finger.
Yeah. And anyway, all this is so great. I'm curious to know other programs that you think really are fun and exciting that the average person should know about these.
I mean, my favorite go-to right now is Notebook LM, in part because the ability to gather a series of texts of all kinds of modalities, right? Like video, podcast, audio, text, all these things. And then to be able to both understand what's going on. And then my favorite feature in Notebook LM is the kind of like the ability to kind of call into the show and ask a question in real time. Right. So you can generate the podcast. That's great. But then you can like dial in and be like, hey, what about, and you can ask something that's not already in the show.
So you showed us that in the training seminar that I was in, and I was just blown away that right in the middle of it is, that's a really good question. What and it was so smooth in how it reacted to your interaction with it.
Yeah. One of my favorite uses of this is I have a notebook with all of my stuff in it. Because it's like, how many things have I written over the last 20 years? And it's like, I wouldn't remember that I even wrote that. Or I can remember I vaguely wrote it, but I don't know. And so I just have a giant notebook where I'll just say, hey, can you remind me like where I talked about this? And like just kind of, and like the ability for me to find the needle in a haystack is just so magical, right? That's something that I could do if I had half a day to go sort through kind of manually, but like the exponential like impact of that time savings to go say this would have taken me 4 hours and now it took me 45 seconds. That compounded over time is massive, right? Or like I think one of the most exciting things about AI and learning and thinking right now is the way in which expertise just gets turned like to up 1,000. Like yesterday, Google released a paper about a tool that they've been using with ancient inscriptions. And so it can look at a quantity of inscriptions that like over your career, you'll never look at this many inscriptions, right? But when you pull up a particular inscription, it will enable you to make associations to inscriptions that you don't even know exist, right? And so they were showing how they had done years of historical work in very little time. And the answer was not like, oh, we don't need historians anymore. It was like, imagine what you can accomplish now as a historian. Well, imagine the amount and the depth and the breadth of inquiry you can have. My favorite example of this is a engineer at NASA who took a paper from his dissertation on black holes. Just a methods paper. So it didn't have any code in it. It was just like how he went about his dissertation. It was like a chapter 1 kind of a paper. And he gave it to an AI tool. And after 7 or 8 prompts, it produced the same result. And he's like, that took me 2 years. And you could see him kind of like processing in a minute for the moment. And instead of being like, I wasted 2 years, he was like, what questions can I ask now? And I think that's really where it gets exciting. Is like we have our curiosity and our ability to learn have been constrained by the limitations of being finite creatures. And now all of a sudden we have technology that breaks those limitations. And for the first time, we have technology that is on the brink of actually creating knowledge itself. Everything else has just helped us do what we traditionally do, maybe in more efficient ways. This is a first. And, I think that's an exciting thing.
Well, let's shift and talk a little bit more about AI's role in education. And I will tell you, I've had lots of conversations with lots of colleagues. And I would say most of the folks that I've talked to fall into 2 or 3 different categories. You've got about half of them are like, AI is just the next way for everybody to cheat, and we're never going to be able to figure out how to stop it, and it's going to ruin education. And the only answer that they can come up with, well, I'm going back and only handwritten tests and only, no computers and all of this. So you got about that half. You got maybe a quarter, 25% that are like, we are going to start integrating this into how we teach. We're going to try to help students, even though that my field might not be AI or a STEM field. I still need, my students are going to need to know how to use this regardless of what career trajectory they go on. I'm going to find a way to integrate it. So you've got some of those. And then you have the rest that are kind of, they just don't know. They don't know. Maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe they don't understand it. They're frightened of it. They're concerned about cheating and academic fraud. So I get all of these folks. And then, of course, you have another fear among faculty, especially, is that we don't need you. We can have an AI manage all of these courses and save a bunch of money. So let's talk about some of that.
Yeah, here's what I would say first to the everybody's going to cheat. What you have is not an academic integrity or an academic misconduct problem. What you have is a pedagogy and design problem. So most academic misconduct, and I think this has always been true, most academic misconduct can be mitigated by good pedagogy and design. So the way in which you structure your learning, the way you ask them to produce their learning, the way in which you engage them as human beings, not as customers, right? Like the environment that you create is the primary way that you navigate that. If you find that the indiscriminate use of these technologies is prolific in your courses, my first question is not about your students. It's about your content and about your design. We see this in some interesting studies that have started to emerge where they're interviewing actual students. And the long story short is the line of where students feel like the ethical line is moving, in part because there's already this crisis of whether or not like education is worth the return on investment, even in high school, right? People are like, this doesn't help me. It doesn't matter. Like, I don't care. Like, if you have teenagers, you only have this conversation like 3 days a week, right? But in higher ed, it's even worse because now it's expensive, right? And long story short, the line has moved to, if I feel like you've given me a bullshit assignment, I'll give you a bullshit submission, and that's morally right. That's the interesting piece, is that while the institution and the faculty member may say this is wrong, the student won't blink because they see kind of what has been given to them, the result of the pedagogy and design, as kind of a betrayal of the institution and the faculty member's responsibility to actually give them something meaningful. For the people who just have no idea, I hope that they'll pay attention. I mean, I don't have any like gentle, you've got time words for them. It's just like, get on or get left behind. And for the people who are really excited about these tools, I would say the primary way to garner value from these tools is not to just pour them over everything, like putting more ranch on something makes it taste better, right? Quantity does not enhance quality necessarily, but to say, what kind of skills are we trying to build? What kind of humans are we trying to form? And then and only then would this technology help. Sometimes it doesn't. I mean, you know this. I made some of my students hand annotate their text with a pen. And they're like, this is stupid. I was like, I understand it feels stupid, but like if you want to put something in your brain, the pen is literally the greatest technology in the universe. If you want to put something in your computer, like go for it. Like, but you won't hold it in the same way. So I think, you know, part of what we're going to have to sort out. Higher ed is a great example of those multiple waves intersecting at the same time. We've got generational turnover in administration and faculty. We've got huge technological change. We've got huge economic upheaval about is this even worth it anymore? Is a 4-year degree really what I want to do? There's a great piece called the micro-credential generation about how students are using micro-credentials as a way to test the water of formal education. If this is useful, maybe I'll consider more. It's kind of a cautious sampling. That what we're really going to have to figure out is, and this is why my work is about learning and work. Education is freaking out about generative AI. And the world of work says, we know exactly what we need. And so education talks to itself, and it becomes this like this ever increasing anxiety spiral of, oh my God, this is the end of learning as we know it. Which, by the way, we've said about every major technological innovation.
I think Plato was upset about being able to write things
Socrates,
down, right?
he put that in the mouth of Socrates that like, writing was going to ruin us. Yeah,
but we wrote it down, so it worked out, right? Like, you know, we were worried about the printing press, we were worried about the internet, we were, you know, and have these things sometimes made learning worse? Yeah. Anybody ever read a bad book? Yes. Anybody ever seen something on the internet that wasn't true? Sure. Like, technology is neither all positive or all negative for learning, but it changes us. And, you know, humans are a species where we shape our tools and our tools shape us. And each time a new tool comes, we always panic about how it will shape us. What I hope to be a small part of, is to say, instead of panicking about what this will do, what if we invested our energy in saying, this is what we will allow, this is what we demand, right? So instead of saying, oh no, how will I react, to say, this is what I will do. I think the future of learning is bright. I think this is the golden age of human learning that we're about to walk into. I think in 3 years, any information that is digitized will be able to talk to each other. I have questions that can only be solved at a scale that is not human, and I can't wait to ask those questions. And so that's why I find myself in way too many classrooms, stretched thin, but loving every minute of it.
I'd like to at least explore some of the concerns and perhaps risks. I mean, I know we've already gotten fairly good information about the AI-related risks associated with things like bias or privacy. There's already lots of social science even about that, like if you give an AI training data set that has, you know, represents sort of the social inequalities that we already deal with in the real world, that AI will just spit those back out at you. Privacy is another concern. I think it was Forbes a while back ran an article about Target being able to predict whether its shoppers were pregnant down to the trimester. Whereas like if they just had 4 or 5 data points of your shopping habits, they could kind of within about like 87% accuracy guess which trimester. And that's like a nightmare to think, like some of those people might not have told other people about where they are in their pregnancy journey. What do you think about these issues, bias, privacy, What sort of concerns should we have about these?
Yeah, I mean, these are all things that we have to work out in real time, right? Like AI is different than us, but it is a reflection of us, right? It is trained on us. And so we shouldn't be shocked when it looks and sounds like us in all of our mess and complexity and bias. And I think we've made huge strides already in so many of these spaces, but there's always more to do. I think, too, this is where the wave of generative AI and the wave of big data collide, right? Like, I don't know that Target couldn't do that before generative AI was on the scene. They might have been able to, right? Like, the challenge here is that we live in a world where data and privacy and bias are just a part of the essential infrastructure of navigating the world. And so, yeah, we have to work on technical solutions. Yeah, we have to work on kind of the social and legal boundaries that we set up. I think the harder work actually is working on the people. I think it's probably easier to solve technically for bias in an AI system than it is to help people understand how biases work within themselves. And you have to do both, right? So this is like one of the mistakes we're learning about social media is like filtering content does not necessarily make you a better person. Like narrowing into a silo does not necessarily make it better. There's a book that keeps me up at night about this called The Structure of Ideas, and it's about how this myth of the marketplace of ideas is just it's never been real. But now with technology, we went from some semblance of a public square, which maybe wasn't always that great in the first place, to now being almost impossible with social media and like traditional kind of AI algorithms, right? That, you know, rage and fury kind of fuel these machines. But now with generative AI in the picture, we actually have the ability not to create a small silo of a group of like-minded people, but we could actually create a silo of one. Because now we have technology that can actually not just serve you the material that exists, but produce it. And so how will we design our life so that the fracturing that is already a part of our society doesn't become exponential? Those are real questions that we have to sort out.
Yeah. And on that exact note, I wanted to ask you about this. I don't know if you've ever heard the term ELIZA effect before or not. It's been around, my understanding, since like the 60s or 70s, actually, with very rudimentary programs by today's standards. The idea is that people can have a tendency to view those sorts of programs in very human ways, to attribute to them, to anthropomorphize them, to attribute to them like, oh, no, this thing really is talking to me. This thing really is thinking. This is really, there's got to be something on the other side of this. It's not just ones and zeros behind all of that. I think it was Rolling Stone recently ran an article about folks who get into sort of like obsessive relationships even with some of these chat bots, and not just like romantic relationships, but the idea is like some of them are designed to be very complimentary and borderline obsequious, and that people deliberately like start to develop very grandiose notions of themselves by interacting with these various technologies. And like, oh, ChatGPT has made me realize that I've been chosen for a special spiritual mission. I mean, some of the anecdotes in the article were pretty crazy, but I mean, there's perhaps milder things too. Like there's this program Replica that is designed with the express intent of being a companion to you. What do you think about these concerns?
Yeah, these are complicated. I think these are questions that are not new about how we leverage technology to meet our needs when our human needs are not met. I think feminist ethics of care does a wonderful job raising some of these kinds of questions. What we see right now is that like one of the primary uses of these generative AI tools is for kind of advice, and kind of like, not necessarily in a therapeutic way, but just like in a, can you help me think through X, Y, and Z? I have a friend who has been using this technology to grieve the loss of a child. And they've been sharing some of their conversations, and they've been demonstrably helpful. Right? We see increasingly a bunch of research about how, like, some people, if they don't know if they're engaging with a tool or a therapist, they find actually that the tool is more effective. But the common thread between those kinds of experiments and these kind of anecdotal stories is that you have humans in need and a society that is not structured to meet those needs. Right? So you have this kind of what feminist ethics of care calls precarity, which is like, human life is precarious. Like, we could be in a car accident. Like, life is fragile, right? Precariousness is the state of every human being. Precarity is a social reality that makes life precarious, that doesn't have to be. It is that way because we choose for it to be that way, or we choose to maintain it. The places where I think you see the most troubling applications of these tools are precisely in those places of precarity. It's where people don't have someone to lean on, that they turn to a chatbot, or it's places where they maybe don't have the social support and maybe even the healthcare that they need, or the access to the kind of healthcare they need. So I think, in one sense, these kind of bizarre or problematic uses simply kind of highlight the ways in which we have failed each other. And those. So it's not necessarily just a technical question about, like, well, should you have to be 18 to talk to a chatbot, right? Or whatever that might be. Should a chatbot have to disclose that it's not a person on the other side on a regular basis? Yeah, those are technical questions. But if we solve those questions without the underlying kind of social questions, we're just going to find new ways to make things difficult for ourselves.
What is one question about AI you wish people would ask, but they rarely or never do?
I don't know that it's about AI directly. I wish people would ask if there was something in the world that I could dedicate my full effort and attention to fixing, what would it be? And then help them recognize the ways in which these kinds of technologies can be leveraged in pursuit of that question.
Interesting. Yeah. I think there are some people who have trouble thinking of AI as a tool, right? It's a piece of technology. It's something to help us improve the way we do things. I think I just think the nomenclature it lends to people thinking it's actually doing something that is equivalent to them. I don't have to do any work. It's just going to do all the work, right? That seems a little problematic to me. But I'm like you. I'm much more optimistic about this stuff than a lot of people that I talk to.
Well, I think it's going to be a wild ride. Like, I think when electrification came, the job loss or the job churn, right, between jobs destroyed and jobs created. Like, you weren't a lamplighter anymore, but you could, like, install streetlights, right? Like, was like between 8 and 10%. Our best guess right now is that in the next 5 years, it will be 20, that's a lot. And that's not in 50 years, that's in 5, right? And we're 6 months into the first year of that 5, 6 or 7 months. So I don't think it's going to be all smooth. I think there are real serious questions that we have to ask and try to answer. One of the questions that I hope we'll be able to think about, humans, there will always be work for humans to do. What may come, and what I'm optimistic will come, is a world where humans work not because they must do so to receive enough compensation to survive, but because they choose. There are a lot of things that we do now that the people 100 years ago would look like play, but we think of them as work. What do you mean you sit and write words all day? Why are you not out in the field? Why are you? Well, because we have this giant machine that does that, right? Like the jobs of the future always look unimaginable to the people at a different time. My hope is that the work we do going forward will be work we want to be a part of, than work we must choose to survive. I think a lot of things that we do right now, we will not have to do in the future. But it will depend on the kind of society that we're willing to build, what that next iteration will look like. But I don't think it'll look like this one.
I want to come back, just touch on one thing. We are running out of time, but I want to touch on something that you said in the training seminar. It was probably the one thing that I was like, I'm just not sure he's right on this, right? Which was, and it was about how in academia, it has always been about credentialing, right? What are the letters behind your name? And in the workplace, there's some of that as well, but it's not to the, and your argument was because the cost of gaining knowledge, because the cost of being able, what AI is going to bring is just going to reduce the cost of obtaining knowledge and then being able to make use of that knowledge, that type of credentialing was going to disappear in some way, shape, or form, right? And I'm just thinking, I still am struggling with that because it seems to me like we're always going to want a shorthand way of separating ourselves from everybody else. And credentials are a really effective shorthand way of saying, I have this body of knowledge, or I have this group of skills, or the combination of the two. Whereas, and without those, it's going to be harder for individuals to distinguish themselves from everybody else.
I think that's true to an extent that credentials are a social signal, but I think the economy demonstrates that credentials are not a concrete demonstration of skill.
Sure. Yeah.
So, like, for example, a lot of jobs today that require a degree to apply are currently held by people who do not have a degree. What changed? Not the need for a degree, but the need for a signal, right? Mm-hmm. Or 25% of last year's Harvard MBA class has not found a job. They have the credential of credentials, right? Why is this happening? Well, because these credentials function primarily as a signal, not necessarily as a demonstration of something. So I think what the future of academia is, I'm hopeful. We can try and fight and save what we have, and it will burn down ruthlessly after a while. If we really want to push forward, I think the future of academia is about creating people who can learn, not who have successfully necessarily finished a particular course of study. I think the future of learning is much more generalist than specialist, because the assemblies of capacities you will need in the future are much more agile and unpredictable than what they were in a different time, where you niche down, I did this one thing, right? And I think if higher ed will pivot, if higher ed will think meaningfully about the formation of its people, not just its learners, but of all of its people, of building skills for actual learning, and then getting away from just focusing on expertise, I think the future of higher ed could be fantastic. It's a wide open question whether or not there's appetite to make those shifts.
That's going to be one of those challenging pivots, right? I think there's you'll have some who are pushing for it and some who are very much push against, who want to keep what they have.
Yeah, and I don't think in 10 years they'll be able to keep it. I think it's sand running through their hands.
Based on everything you're saying, I could see something like the need and even demand for some sort of credential that signals like meta literacy, right? Like we have to develop a program where what we can literally say is we have helped these people specialized in their ability to learn new things.
Well, and I think essentially like jobs of the future will largely say, these are the people we need. If you already have them, like great, come on board. And if you can demonstrate that you can acquire them rapidly, great, come on board. I think as learning and work begin to blur again, if we get that right, where World of Work has the ability to actually train and skill and upskill and reskill, that we'll just say who are the people who can pick up quickly, and that's and we'll see what happens. Yeah.
We're way up against our time, but we cannot sign off without
we got
the most
final
important question that we ask any guest at all. I have had, I think, the last 2 opportunities. Do you want to go this time?
I can. Sure. Okay. So here's the scenario. You're going home after this podcast and sitting down and relaxing, but you've only got 2 options. You're going to watch something on television, but you've only got 2 options. Okay. Option number 1, you can watch an episode of 30 Rock, or option number 2, you can watch an episode of Seinfeld. Which of those are you going with?
I'm going with Seinfeld.
There we go. But I tell you what, the distance between the two just continues to grow. I'm just going to say.
I think at the end of the day, my brain feels like Kramer most of the time.
I would argue that Elizabeth Loftus choosing 30 Rock should count for like 2 or 3 votes for 30 Rock. That was a big get for me. All right.
I don't know what to say to that. It's just that when you're losing, you're always trying to find ways of rigging the game so you're not losing anymore.
I'm white knuckling my show. I'm not giving up 30 Rock.
All right. I'm
on my 22nd watch through right now, in fact.
He's going to have to add it to the pre-screen list for future guests.
Probably so. Yeah. Well, Michael, thank you again for visiting with us. This has been a fascinating conversation. It's an area that I think both of us are very much interested in exploring and learning about both ourselves, how we can use AI, but in the larger scheme of things, how it's going to transform the world around us, and especially our world, which is the academic world. And like you, I'm very optimistic about the opportunities that are out there. So thank you again.
Please, thank you so much.
And we will talk to everyone next time.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to Curiosity Porn with the 2 best intellectual pole dancers in the United States, Dr. Guy Crane and Professor James Davenport. If you'd like to share a comment about today's episode, suggest a guest or topic, or just leave a compliment or complaint, you can reach us at curprn@gmail.com. We hope to hear from you.